Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal of Washington. She was at today's roundtable with survivors of Epstein's abuse.
There was like a split screen today because the king was on Capitol Hill addressing a joint session of Congress. Meanwhile, we see that no mention of the Epstein survivors or Epstein or anything of that nature in the speech. And then you've got the juxtaposition of this gathering, this meeting, this forum, if you will, earlier in the day. What did you hear?
Yeah, no, exactly. I was at that roundtable. I've been working, obviously, with the survivors, many of them, for months now. I've gotten to know them. I think many of us feel like we have just derived so much inspiration from them. And the reason to do the roundtable, the reason that Ro Khanna did the roundtable today, was specifically both because this was the anniversary of Virginia Giuffre's passing this last weekend, and because King Charles was here, and we wanted him to meet with the survivors and with Virginia's family, Amanda and Sky, and be able to say to them some form of apology for what his brother did. Now, obviously, he didn't want to do that. Very vague reference that I took to be about that, but it was so vague you could have missed it. And, you know, it was a missed opportunity in what was otherwise a good speech from the perspective of UK-US relations, but it was a big missed opportunity. And the roundtable was heartbreaking and inspiring all at once. That's what I always feel when I'm with the survivors. Inspiring because of their courage, their resilience to continue to stand up, to not give up, to tell their stories, to go through the trauma of that over and over again. And yet, just like Pam Bondi ignored them, King Charles ignored them today.
So, what was the expectation? Seriously, I mean, stop and think about this in the context of how it plays from the king's perspective, the British government, and the expectations that we have here. What did people expect him to do, really? I mean, I find it hard to believe that anyone really thought that the king was going to come step into that. So the question of whether or not the king ignored it or the king did this, I mean, the politics of the moment, given everything else that we've gone through in this country, why would he come in and that be the leading part of the story of his visit, in one sense, given the war, which is why I said when this was announced, the king should stay behind home. Because you've got a war raging where his government is in disagreement with this administration. Number two, you have this very big, very personal issue for both him and the American people who are vested in getting answers to this. And so I guess I'm with you. I would have preferred, if you're going to come here, you got to come to the table and say something. But at the same time, I understand the expectation being on the other side, from their side, we're not going to do that.
I mean, I'm sure that's probably, he felt like it was the safest thing to do. If I had been him, I would have had a private meeting with them. That's what I would have done. I wouldn't have said it in an open speech, but I would have had a meeting with them.
And that would have been...
And I think that, and it didn't need to be all of the survivors. It could have just been Virginia Giuffre's family.
If nothing else, right?
I mean, it could have been a small private meeting. Of course, it would have been public. But listen, he is obviously skilled. On the one hand, he has, you know, a fairly chummy relationship with Donald Trump. In the speech, he took some shots at him, you know, I think. The line that I appreciated the most was about the executive and the checks and balances. I mean, you heard the raucous yelling in the chamber for that, but he had some others. I mean, he didn't use the words climate change. He was very careful, but he talked about the environment. He talked about Ukraine. That was a very direct appeal. And so I think he could have done what he did with Trump with the survivors. He could have had a one-on-one meeting, and he could have essentially expressed that the fact that the British government is taking more action than we are here in the United States. There was a way for this to be a win for him and also for the survivors a very important moment.
Let's talk about what the king was here to do, though. He was here to warm up what has become a rather cold relationship, specifically as it relates to the Iran war, given that Keir Starmer in Britain is not where the president of the United States wants him to be. And there was this reporting about the ways in which the Trump administration is now considering retribution for countries who do not get in line on Iran. This is from The Times. An internal Pentagon email reported by the Reuters news agency suggested that options under review include withdrawing American support for Britain's sovereignty over the Falkland Islands, which are also claimed by Argentina, and seeking to suspend Spain from NATO. And meanwhile, you have Milei in Argentina being like, yes, that is a great idea. So, I mean, he is completely re-scrambling the world order. And I understand what the king was sent here to do. I think it's an open question of whether or not you can succeed if you're not willing to get on board with a war of choice.
I mean, look, Trump changes his mind based on who praises him day to day. So maybe today there was a warm relationship because he's a wannabe king standing next to a king. And but
I
think,
did post two kings.
Yes,
the White House social media account posted a photo of King Charles and President Trump. Talk about two kings.
Yes, that's right. He did. And, you know, but I think that at the end of the day, what he has to realize is that these countries have their own constituencies that they have to respond to. And they are not going to be dragged into a war that hurts their people and that is deeply unpopular with their people. So there was a time when Donald Trump really liked the Prime Minister of Italy. Well, he doesn't today. And so this is part of the expectation that he has, that people are just going to bow down. He didn't go to these countries and build a coalition before he went to Iran any more than he came to Congress to ask for authorization. So the idea that he is now going to be able to shoehorn them into participating in this war is delusional. And we're seeing how delusional the whole Iran war is, because look at where we are. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. And anybody who thinks, first of all, that you can withdraw the United States out of the JCPOA, that nuclear deal with Iran that Barack Obama took 2 years to negotiate, and get a better deal, number one, and number two, not know that Iran was going to use the Strait of Hormuz as its economic leverage, is literally out to lunch. He thought that this was going to be the same as going into Venezuela or the first Iran strike. He allowed Benjamin Netanyahu into the Situation Room to essentially direct this, and he, as the leader of the United States, said, I agree with you, I'm going to do that. I mean, this is remarkable. What has happened in the course of this Iran war is remarkable.